Hello there, and welcome back to Normal Guy Games. So just recently I have obviously been working on my Leviathan Tyranids, and I am ready to paint the final model from Leviathan. The model that I saved for last is the Winged Tyranid Prime. So let's have a look at it and get into the scheme, and let's do this. So to start off the scheme, I went with Zenithal, or in some cases Slapchop, depending on what you choose. Now I did leave some shadows, so in this case it would definitely be more leaning towards Slapchop. I used my airbrush though, so I did not use any kind of dry brushing like you would in normal Slapchop. So I went with my original base wash, and that's Carapace Crimson, and this is in lieu of using any kind of paints or anything like that, or even a contrast paint. And the reason why I chose this for my scheme is because I had a large pot of it, and also I like the way that it functions on the model. I like the way it flows. So it leaves plenty of shadows, it leaves plenty of highlights. It functions fairly well when you're trying to just color up the white areas of the flesh of the skin here. Now, as you can see, I'm just kind of literally just throwing it on there as I need to. I'm being kind of careful on certain places because I want the Carapace to be. We're going to use a mix of Eldari Emerald and a couple other colors to do the Carapace and the wings. Now, when you're doing these areas, just make sure you don't let it pool too much, just like with the termagants that I painted. You want to make sure that you are catching all of the areas, leaving just the right amount of wash on the tops, and just make sure that you don't let the wash pool or stain. Actually, you don't want it to dry in one specific place, or it will stain as well. So doing with the wash, you're only going to do the undersides of everything. You're going to do the fleshy areas, and we're going to leave all the bone and the carapace. We're going to leave that alone so we can paint that in a different color. Now right now I am doing the claws as well, but I will go back and I will do the claws in a different color. So that's not going to be a problem. Plus it doesn't hurt to have the claws a little darker when I paint the second color. So moving on to the carapace, I went with Eldari Emerald, and this has been one of my more favorite contrast paints because I like how dark it gets in the recesses, but how much it pulls away from the tops of everything and gets kind of light. I really like the way that this contrast paint flows and functions, just like I like the way Carapace Crimson ends up as well. Now, if you look at the color wheel, green and red are two opposing colors, so they contrast very well, and that's why I went with the Eldari Emerald to give it sort of a contrasty feel to it, to make the green stand out against the red. Now, when you're doing the carapace, just like the wash, you don't want to let it pool in a large area. You don't want to let it. You don't want to put too little or too much, right? You want to redirect any of that paint to the proper areas, right? So you don't want to have that green paint too dark, but you do want to have a little bit in the recesses. Now, obviously, as a contrast paint, you do have to learn how to kind of redirect everything. Now, I'm using a dark jade here to do the hooves. It's one of the few non-contrast colors that I'm using for this scheme. Now, I am moving on to do Athonian Camo Shade, and for that, I am actually putting that on all of the carapace. Now, I didn't necessarily do this for the other Tyranids I painted, but for this guy, for all my characters, I always make the characters stand out a little more than the rest of the army, because everybody's going to have, bricks and bricks and bricks of termagants, hormagaunts, whatever. But when it comes down to the main pieces of the army, when it comes down to the character models and the more important models, you want to have them stand out on the battlefield. At least I do. I like having them stand out. So I spend a little bit extra time on these. Now, I am testing out this drop paint. This is new. And this paint actually, surprisingly enough, acts like a glaze. It's very thin because obviously it's meant for use in the airbrush. So what I did is on all of the edges and the corners and the raised areas that have any kind of ridges or anything like that, I went and I used this green drop paint to kind of highlight everything. And I did this 2, sometimes 3 times in some areas, just to vary the amount of green that you see on each place. And this turned out really well for me, quite honestly. I'm quite satisfied with how the drop paint functioned in this manner. Now, I did in instances here, I did put a little bit of that green a little further up on the carapace as well, and I kind of concentrated the lighter green on just the edges, and I let some of the paint not necessarily pool across, but drag across the inner areas too, to give it an almost kind of a glowy sort of a look to it, as you can see here. Now, what I did from here is I actually put the wings on their own little mounts, okay? And this is just me painting that Carapace crimson on the edges of the wings, okay? So ignore my my lack of miniature in the in the shot here. But so along with the rest of the flesh, I used just that Carapace crimson, and I was very careful, trying really hard not to get too much of it on the membranes of the wings, okay? So when you're doing this particular piece, make sure you avoid the membranes of the wings, all right? But you've seen me do this piece on the rest of the Tyranids, so let's move on to the rest of it. So this is what I've done here. I took some Aethermatic Blue and I took some Shyish Purple and I put a little bit on my palette. And I used the purple on the bottom of the wing, and then I took the Aethermatic Blue and I brushed it into the purple, right? So this is wet blending. And then I took some Azurman Blue, or any kind of like a Talisar Blue would be fine here as well, to paint that into the recesses of the wings. And that kind of makes the wings stand out a little bit. Now you can honestly use just about any color here. You could use a green if you wanted. You could use another purple. I went with blue because I feel like blue allowed me to blend the two colors in a little bit better. Now, I did remove the stick here, the little alligator clip there, because it was getting hard for me to keep it in shot. But let me show you what it looks like. So, once I get all of the wings done, this is how it turned out. I'm actually quite happy with it. I like it. I like the way it looks, and I think I spent just enough time on it to make it stand out, because I like to do that with my characters. Like I said, I like to make them stand out. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.